Read about it tomorrow. See it tonight. Hear it all day today. If it's happening in the Coachella Valley, it's front and center now. Now, here's Russ Betts.
You have to give some kudos to Mission Springs Water District for making its board meetings accessible for online viewing. Welcome to the Russ Betts Show, coming to you from beautiful downtown Palm Springs. You know, when people can watch, they begin to participate. It puts the issues out in the open, everybody can see, and they can decide for themselves what took place. And that's a far better situation than relying on reports that otherwise would come from shrill voices or voices of board-friendly shills. In case you haven't heard, Mission Springs Water District is going to district elections, and that required them to bring in a demographer to draw those district boundaries. Now, the questions come up, have those boundaries been drawn in a way that benefit the incumbent directors? Now, the best place to start would be with the demographer himself. And again, the question is, were lines redrawn to benefit incumbent directors?
I did a rough draft of all of these drafts without any input from anybody and without knowing anything about where any of the board members lived. After having done that, I did look at where the board members lived, and to the extent that extremely minor changes could be made to the boundaries in order to allow the current board members to run again in separate areas. The boundaries were moved slightly.
So from those comments there, it would appear that when he drew the maps, originally, he didn't pay attention to where the directors lived, but once the maps were finished, he did redraw the lines to accommodate incumbent directors. Now, those were questions that were raised at a public hearing on June 16th, 2020, and it led to subsequent discussion at another public hearing on June 24th, which included comments from a public speaker that caused, got the conversation rolling again on June 24th.
Okay, so now we'll have the public comments part of this. Okay, Dory, what do we have for public?
We have Susan Werner, who would like to give public comment. Go ahead, Susan.
All right. Hello. Hi, I'm Susan Werner.
Hi, welcome.
I submitted a comment for the prior meeting. Thanks for reading it. And I did listen in. I thought I would just provide further comments. I'm glad to know that the demographer was not privy to where the current board members live. It frankly hadn't even crossed my mind. I also appreciated, I think it was Russell Betts' comments from last week about the draft 1 map, or I'm sorry, draft 2, where there's a slight dogleg of District 2 between West and Santa Cruz. It just seems a little off. We all know that public opinion can be based on perception and not reality. So the best districting maps are straight lines. So the thought of gerrymandering is, not even a thing. And I'm sure the demographer is well aware.
Okay, so now we can have some board discussion. Okay, Steve, you had your hand up.
Wanted to correct the misconception. I think that Ms. Werner had about the demographer not having information as to directors' residences. Although he did say that he didn't consider that in the original mapping, after he was completed with that, this is my understanding from what he testified to last week, that he did, in fact, consider where directors lived, and then made changes so that no director would be challenged by another director in their current residence.
Okay, so between the two meetings, the two public hearings, ended up sending this question into a controversy, where the boundaries moved to accommodate directors. And some of that spilled over into the second public hearing on the 24th. And here this attorney is trying to get to the heart of that matter.
President, I'd like to ask the demographer a question
Sure.
to clarify the record. Mr. Eli, did you create the maps that you created in order to protect one particular board member of the Mission Springs Water District?
No, I was completely unaware of where any of the board members lived when I created the drafts. The modifications that I made to the drafts were extremely slight in order to put each of the incumbents into a separate district with no
Which is legal.
particular ones.
Thank you, sir. So that's
Okay.
apparently not, that apparently is not an issue and is not based on fact, that allegation.
Thank you.
So I don't know what point the board attorney is trying to make here. He seems to be establishing for the record that for some reason the lines weren't moved to accommodate directors. But quite clearly from the demographer's comments, the lines were moved. The great lengths that somebody has gone to try and, address this issue that caused me to want to make sure that it was well documented. And again, kudos to Mission Springs Water District for making sure these records are public and open.
I did look at where the board members lived, and to the extent that extremely minor changes could be made to the boundaries in order to allow the current board members to run again in separate areas. The boundaries were moved slightly. The modifications that I made to the drafts were extremely slight in order to put each of the incumbents into a separate district